Howdy everyone, Chris Treadaway here, reporting from South by Southwest Interactive Conference in Austin, Texas. I thought I'd give a quick recap today about the show and my experience there. First of all, it was just a fantastic event. Really happy for the organizers and the PR people who were behind it. I think it was Porter Novelli, but don't quote me on that. Rumor was that they had 15 to 16,000 people in attendance, which was up from the 11,000 or so last year. So it was really just a fantastic event for people who are interested in web, social media, and so on. It was a great atmosphere. Tons of startup folks and investor folks and a handful of industry folks. It was just a spectacular time. It was really the sense that the startup scene is picking up pretty significantly. Just a wide range of startups in a variety of different areas, mostly in the social media space and some in the mobile marketing space, but it was really fantastic. I attended as obviously founder and CEO of Notice Technologies, my company, which was a South by Southwest Accelerator, BizSpark Accelerator alternate company. But I spent pretty much the entire time over the 4 days at the conference, and it was just really spectacular. The main buzz around the show was around location-based services. Foursquare versus Gowalla versus MyTown versus Looped versus everyone else. I mean, it's just the location-based hysteria was just off the charts, and it was sort of perfect for South by Southwest if you think about it, because first of all, it's an early adopter crowd, and so everyone there is going to have a smartphone, and everyone there is going to be using location-based services. But also, the location-based services are perfect for conferences. If you think about trying to meet up with people that you know, or trying to find people, it's very difficult in a sea of 16,000, but it's much easier with the location-based apps and all that. So it's interesting. I think there's a little bit too much hype given the reality. I mean, I certainly credit, especially Foursquare, it tends to get the word out about themselves really well, but they're very high on the PR meter given reality, and I think people are interested in kind of seeing what's new and being aligned with what's new. But I think there are actually a number of questions really about LBS. I mean, these apps are not necessarily all that difficult to build. The toughest part of LBS is building the audience, obviously, and making these things cross-platform so they work on a variety of different types of devices to accelerate adoption. But you just sort of have to wonder if you're going to get into this situation in the next year where there'll be a lot of different sort of branded location-based serviced applications, or a number of new entrants. What are the major players going to do? I mean, Yelp and Foursquare, Facebook, I should say, should have their own LBS features inside their applications, not to mention a variety of other major players who are rumored to be throwing together some location services in their apps. And I kind of wonder, once it gets past early adopters, are we going to run into this sort of resurgence of privacy concerns around whether or not people want to share their location necessarily? I think of a variety of situations in Facebook, for instance, or LinkedIn, where our networks have proliferated because maybe we started off saying we're going to have really close friends involved in our networks, but then with time we get more and more gray areas, and then it's not just friends anymore, it's friends and acquaintances and business contacts and maybe even people you don't even like, right, in your social graph. Now, if you do that for location-based services, it's a much bigger problem, right, because there are certain people you may not want to share location with. So add to that the fact that there has to be a really good, compelling value proposition for checking in. The gameplay stuff has been great for the early adopter crowd, I think, but the value proposition for consumer check-in obviously has to continue to improve and evolve. And I think we've already seen the major players do some of that and improve their applications quite a bit, but I just expect to see a lot more of that. It'd be interesting to see a year from now how many of these are still independent. I sort of wonder when the major players will begin to buy a few of these just to get a big location-based footprint. So we'll see. We'll kind of see what happens there. In terms of other buzz, I mean, location-based really, to me, drowned out the rest of the buzz at the conference. I was one of the many people that installed PlanCast, for instance, before I went to the show, and but I couldn't find anything really going on about PlanCast while I was at the show. It seemed to be a big PR effort before the show, but not much really at the show for PlanCast. I thought the major tech players had a bit of a muted presence. So, like AOL had a booth outside the trade show floor. Microsoft had a booth inside. Google had a relatively small booth inside. But by and large, the major players were relatively quiet. I didn't run into anyone from Yelp at the show at all. And a few others were just sort of lurking. And I just thought that was really pretty interesting. As far as the rest of the trade show floor, I thought the trade show floor, had a lot of social applications that were very hard to sort of distinguish between. Social is obviously a big deal, huge market to take advantage, help corporations take advantage or people take advantage of their social graphs in new ways. But I just thought there were a lot of startups with pretty much the same sort of, we'll help you with social whatever value proposition. And it'll be interesting to see how the differentiation shakes out over time. Interestingly, South by Southwest utilized a lot of printed paper in different places, which seemed to be a little bit of a waste to me. And the mysouthbysouthwest.com website, which I think has a ton of potential, just to me didn't really live up to its expectations again in 2010. Hopefully that'll improve next year. A few quick notes about startups, and then we'll wrap up. Overall, I was very happy for the Texas companies in the accelerator. I thought ShopSavvy, Gendai Games, and Spreadfast all showed up really well relative to their competition in the accelerator. I thought that a few of the startups were a little hit or miss. There was a little bit of variety, I thought, amongst the accelerator companies that I spoke with. But the Texas companies, ShopSavvy, Gendai Games, and Spreadfast, I thought were really great and certainly looked really good relative to the other companies there. And it's interesting because I had, during the conference, several venture capital folks from the West Coast asking about interesting tech startups in Austin and in Texas that they could perhaps get connected to. I just thought that was a very interesting data point because I had heard that in Silicon Valley there's this increasing sense that the good deals are already pretty well funded. And I just thought it was very interesting that people were talking to me about what startups that I thought would be interesting for them to engage with. Typically, it's hard for Texas companies more to get some exposure on the West Coast, and because it's very inconvenient, at least geographically. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. My only real gripe about the show was that it could have had a few more enterprise people. It was very consumer web oriented, which I think is great, but I think for the show to expand and to reach into some new markets and attract some other types of startups, I think it'd be great to have some enterprise presence. I found it very interesting that Microsoft organized the Mix conference at the same time as South by Southwest. I would love to see these two go back to back in the future. I mean, Austin's a great place to have a tech conference, as South by Southwest is certainly showing. It'd be very interesting to have perhaps Microsoft hold Mix in Austin before South by Southwest Interactive to get the enterprise element in, because I know Mix from the times I've been to Mix. There's certainly a lot of enterprise people running around. So anyhow, it was a great show. Certainly more to come, but I think South by Southwest is certainly here to stay, and it's a great thing for Austin, a great thing for Texas, and looking forward to it next year.